Hi, my name's Chris Kazmarek, and I'm one of Top Test Prep's SSAT experts. Today I want to talk to you just a little bit about the verbal section of the SSAT. Before we talked about the specifics of analogies versus synonyms, however, I think it's important to note which one of these you personally think is the easier section. After a couple of practice tests, you should have a pretty clear idea of whether or not you think synonyms are harder than analogies, or vice versa. Once you have a grasp on this concept, you should definitely go and answer the questions that you think are easier first, so you have more time to spend on the more difficult questions, whichever case that may be. That being said, let's look at a couple of strategies to make synonyms a little bit easier. Number one, whenever you're faced with a question, a word in all capitals staring at you in the face, you should ask yourself, do I know this word? Have I seen it before? If you have, that's absolutely fantastic, because you can pick the answer choice that is most closely related to the question word, and continue along your path towards a high SSAT verbal score. However, in the unfortunate yet inevitable case where you do not know the word, there are a couple of avenues that you can pull from to try to get some sort of idea of what this word means. You can look at roots, break the word down into its component parts, and see if any of these are familiar to you from any other words that might be related to this word. You can think of if you've ever seen this word before, and what context this word was used in, to get a general idea of what the word means. And finally, you can ask yourself if this word looks similar to any word that you've used in a foreign language, and if that's going to help you get a grasp of what this word means. Whether it's the word itself, or just a part of the word, any help at all in breaking it down is going to be very important and very, very helpful in getting you to a working knowledge of what the word means and a matching answer choice that will increase your score. However, if none of that really works, there's another strategy that you can use, and that's evaluating the charge of the word. There are three main charges that each word's going to have: positive, negative, or neither, neutral. And when you're faced with a word that you just don't know what it means, you can look at the root words very hard, not difficult, that's not the thesaurus that works, brain.
Let's just start with charges.
Number two, yeah, because I've done number one several times. If none of that works, however, you can evaluate the charge of the word. There are three main charges, or emotions, that are put behind any given word that you're going to see on the SSAT, those being positive, negative, and neutral. Therefore, if you look at the word and break it down to its component parts, and see a ben, for example, you can know that that's positive. Or if you see a mau, for example, you can know that that's negative. Evaluating the charge of the word may not get you to the right answer 100% of the time. However, it will be able to help you eliminate wrong answer choices by having a word with a positive charge not matching up with a word with a negative charge in the answer choices. Therefore, it will give you a statistic advantage to your guessing, if that is the case that you come into. Second, let's look at analogies a little bit. Analogies are very similar to synonyms insofar as a lot of the time there are going to be words that you don't really know. So, all of these tips that I just gave you for synonyms can be cross-applied very easily to figuring out what words in analogies mean. However, analogies have a couple of extra steps that synonyms do not possess. Number one, you should always build a bridge when faced with analogies. You're always going to know two words on the left, and you will know 1 or 0 words on the right side of the analogy. Therefore, you should always figure out what the connection between two words is, whether one's a component part of the other, they're synonyms, they're antonyms. This is essentially crucial to answering analogies correctly, because the relationship on the left must match the relationship on the right. And finally, there are a couple of extra strategies for two blank questions in analogies. The primary one being that if half of the question is wrong, the entire question is wrong. When you're given a question in analogies with two blanks, you should not only look at the relationship within each different analogy, but the relationship with the first part of the first analogy and the first part of the second analogy, and the respective second parts of each as well. If those parts don't match one another in the question and the answer choice, then that answer doesn't work. The great thing about having two blanks is that if one of these blanks is wrong, the entire question's wrong. So you can go through a systematic elimination process by picking the first one, seeing if they match, and then picking the second one and seeing if the remainder of those that you haven't eliminated match as well. Utilizing these 4 strategies is going to be extremely helpful in raising your SSAT verbal score.